Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Books Don't Review Themselves. I'm Kim.
I'm Jessica.
And today we are going to be talking about What Happened That Night by Deanna Cameron. I'll start us off with a reading of the synopsis so we're all on the same page before we go off in our whatever we do. All right, this is from Amazon. Griffin Tomlin is dead, and Clara's sister killed him. 4 months after the murder, the entire town of Shiloh is still in shock. For Clara Porterfield, the normal world has crumbled around her in a million chaotic pieces. Now Clara lives in a new reality, where her sister awaits trial for murder, her mother obsessively digs in a dead, frozen garden, and her father lives and breathes denial. At school, Clara is haunted by her classmates' morbid curiosity and all of the unspoken questions they won't ask. But none of them knows what she knows. Now Clara's sister wants something from her. The one thing in all of this that Clara isn't ready to face. The truth about what really happened that night. Because the story didn't die with Griffin Tomlin. There's another story that needs to be told. And sometimes the lies we're told are nowhere near as deadly as the lies we tell ourselves. All right, so how many stars?
I would give it 5 stars.
Really?
Yep.
I would too.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a feeling that I would. It seems like with a lot of the young adult suspense thrillers, they're intense. They are very intense. Like, we've read adult thrillers that are not this intense. I thought it was really, really good. And there was a lot that I didn't see coming.
I was totally surprised because we pick books like a month or more out, so we can schedule it. And I had completely forgotten what this book is about.
Right, yep.
I just started on my Kindle, and the way it started, it was fine, but I was thinking to myself, and you knew right away, okay, so trigger warning, I guess we should have started with that, because this one does have a lot of trigger warnings. So before we go farther, the trigger warnings: rape, sexual sadism, animal mutilation, physical abuse, and psychological abuse. So if you're triggered,
don't watch it.
Exactly. Yeah. Go to a different episode. Okay, going back to what I was saying now. I started out and I'm like, okay, right away that there's going to be rape. And I'm like,
right.
Okay, that's horrible. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, please, dear God, don't let this be like a wussy, all teenage drama and I need to skim. Because I'm like, I'm just wasn't in the mood.
Right.
And I got further along, not much farther. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is pretty intense. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah, because like when I started reading it, I had the same thoughts where I'm like, okay, this is gonna, like, clearly she was raped. And I almost, like, wanted to get to that part, not because that's intriguing, but because I wanted to know, like, am I right? Like, is there, or is this a twist?
Yeah.
Or, like, is she misleading me in some way? And then when I got to that part, I guess I don't have any experiences to base rape off of, besides, like, movies or whatever. But it seemed very
horrible.
Yeah.
Which is an understatement. I mean, that's not a, yeah.
I mean, there's nothing about it that's pleasant, but I guess, I think, for, like, we've talked about this in other books where, on a little bit of a tangent, like, when you read, like, 50 Shades of Grey, and you're reading these scenes, something about it is more sexual when you're reading it, as opposed to, like, watching porn or something. And I don't know if that was part of it, but reading the details of it happening as opposed to, like, when you see something in a movie, I don't know if that made it more intense. And I guess the other thing, too, that was also involved in the rape was, I don't know what you call it, some, like, with, like, the knife and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if you would call it mutilation per se.
Yeah, he was mutilating her body.
But, like, adding that
to it
was like, ooh, okay, that's...
And the thing that really got me, besides, out of all the horrible things that happened in this book, and this is not the right way to say it, but, like, the rape was, like, the least horrible. Which, I mean, that's not a good way to say that.
Yeah, we're not trying to minimize it by any way. It's just, out of all the bad things, somehow that... At the end of the book, when you were finished,
worst.
Yeah, you were like,
so saying that tells you a lot about this book.
And it almost even felt, though, because Clara was the one that was raped. it even felt like she minimized it.
And
like at first she minimized it because she was like, no one's gonna believe me. I mean, this is this popular guy, no one's gonna believe me.
Mm-hmm.
But then towards the end of the book, it seemed like she minimized it because she was like, yeah, he did this to me, but he didn't deserve to die, and you know, the other stuff that happened didn't deserve to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go to kind of find out that the rape and the Griffin's whole persona was also egged on, you know?
So I'm going to stop us for a second there, because I feel at this point, it's just going to be spoilers. Because, I mean, if we really get into it, like, especially with Wilson and stuff, I mean, that is like spoiler.
Yeah, there's really no good way for us to talk about this without getting into some spoilers.
And I want to talk about it.
Right.
Definitely read it. You know, if this sounds intriguing to you, we both highly recommend it.
It was a very good book. It is very intense. So if you're someone who doesn't like that and you like milder books, don't read this. Don't read it. And if you're triggered by any of those things, also don't read it. Because it is very descriptive.
Yes. But for those of you who want to stick around and hear more about the book, please join us.
Yes.
Continue to join us. Yeah. So, okay. So you have her rape, him mutilating her with a knife. And then the thing, I mean, rape it's about power, you know?
Right.
And the way that Deanna Cameron wrote that was just, it was just layer upon layer. And it was, I mean, I don't get freaked out easily because I don't. But after reading this, and my sinuses are horrible, so my eyes are just going to start watering. Apologize for that. But after reading this, I was like, I was creeped. I'm just like, what the? Ew.
Well, and I think the other thing that makes it creepy is that this is happening with teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because, I mean, I guess there was a point when I was reading this about Griffin, and then, so the rape happens, and you think that it's going to be done. Like, okay, he raped her, like, got what he wanted, whatever. He's going to leave her alone now because he doesn't want to get caught. I mean, that's what you would assume.
Mm-hmm. Or he's going to go on to someone else.
Right.
And rape other people.
But then
that wasn't the case.
She starts getting text messages, and they're like incessant, obsessive text messages. Like, you love me, you know you love me, like, why aren't you texting me back? And then it's like, you're a slut, you know. And the mental part of all this, like,
the emotional abuse that just layered on top of everything else.
Yeah. Like, that to me was also very intense. And again, I don't have anything to base rape or what that's like off of. And it made me think, like, is this what it's like? Like, because they do say most of the time when people are raped, it's by someone they know. So that got me thinking, like, it's not even just the rape. It's not even just the sexual act. It's the mental part of it. It's the aftermath. It's the after fact. Like, are you texting? Are you harassing them? Are you playing mind games with them?
And it just shows, I mean, so many women and men who also get raped don't come forward, first of all, because they don't think people will believe them.
Right.
But second of all, because what if their abuser is still doing these type of things, you know, or says, I'm sure a lot of rapists probably do say something like, I will kill you if you ever tell someone. And if it is someone you know, they can easily kill you because they have easy access to you.
I mean, the other thing, too, is with Griffin, again, when I thought of rape, I just think of sex. I didn't think of the whole mutilation and the knife thing. So for him to have the knife and mutilate her and then be like, I'll kill you, it's like, oh, he's very capable of this. Like, he's very capable of killing me. So that, to me, was just like, because I always thought, and this is probably very naive of me, that if someone threatened that to me and hurt, like, raped me in that way, I'd be like, no, fuck you. I'm telling everybody, you know. But it's like, when I read this, it made me think twice about that, because I'm like, all right, if I had that type of scenario happen, I would probably think twice about reporting it. And the other layer to this is having it be with teens, because that in itself makes you more vulnerable.
It's so traumatizing to be a teenager anyway.
Right. It's traumatizing to be a teenager, and then to tell your parents. Like,
you don't even watch sex scenes with your parents on a show.
Right.
How are you going to talk to them about being raped?
And then the other layer to this is, so Griffin is Clara's neighbor, and Griffin's mom and Clara's mom are best friends.
So you got that extra.
So it's like, can you imagine, like, you know, Mom, Griffin raped me. Like, you can just see her saying, oh, you know, honey, are you sure maybe, you know, it just wasn't what you thought it was, you know, or
hopefully, I could totally see that, but I mean, hopefully her mom would be like, let's go kill that motherfucker instead.
Right.
But you have the whole, once again, best friend. You know, how can you say, hey, guess what? Your son raped my daughter. What are we going to do about this? I mean, what?
Yeah, and so, I mean, that was just, there was layer, like you said, layer upon layer with just Griffin. Mm-hmm. And then, so obviously Griffin ends up... Go ahead.
I was going to say, plus you have her dad, Clara and Emily's dad.
Yes.
Who totally believes that Emily is innocent.
Right.
And it also seems at times that he believes Clara should not have done various things that she did.
Right.
Because it's keeping Emily in prison longer.
Right.
So he doesn't ever come out directly to Clara and say, you are a horrible child. Why did you do this to your sister? But it's there. You know, so that's another thing for Clara to have to deal with.
Yeah, and the one thing that did make me happy, and again, I know this is a story, but it did make me happy that, like, one parent stood by her. Yeah, stood by her and took her side and supported her. Oh my God, like I teared up when, you know, they get home and her mom's like, Clara, we need to talk about this. And Clara's like, well, would you even I don't want to talk about this. And then she's like, would you even believe me if I told you? Because that was her whole thing for not telling anybody. She's like, no one's gonna believe me.
Yeah. And then the other layer to this is Griffin, the boy next door. He was also like super popular.
Yes.
You know, and he had two sides to him. She always explained it like his, you know, eyes look normal, and then all of a sudden they'd turn like a stormy ocean when he was, you know, turning to his other side. And people thought he was a great guy.
Right.
You know, and to just go and accuse him of rape, who's going to believe her?
Right.
I would believe her. I would be like,
yeah,
let's go find that motherfucker.
Well, and not only that, I mean, she had the scars to prove her story and what she was saying. And then I guess just to kind of continue about Griffin, it's kind of hard to continue with Griffin without going into the other things because you can't just throw Emily in
without more context.
Yeah. So basically, Emily is in prison. She's accused of killing Griffin. I think they said it was blunt force trauma, and then she like pushed him in the pool, and then
he drowned.
So she's in prison for that.
And this is where I thought Deanna Cameron did awesome, because I'm like, okay, so she killed him protecting her sister, you know. But that's great.
Right, and that's exactly what you think.
And then, oh dear God.
Yeah, that's exactly what you think.
Woo!
There's so much.
There is. It's just like, what? And then she just layer after layer, and I'm like, Cameron,
but she did
oh my
it
God.
So well. She did it so well. So the whole Griffin thing happened. And then one of the other things mentioned was how Emily was dating this guy, Wilson. We can't think of his last name. Yeah. It was a W, but it's Wilson something. She like comes to the ice cream shop that Clara works at with a black guy. And so it's like, oh, this is the first time Wilson hit her. For probably half of the book.
At least.
You think Wilson's this abusive douchebag.
So super spoiler, if you've like gotten to this point, you're like, that book sounds really good, you might want to stop now and just go buy the book and read it, because we're going to give a lot of things away.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to think. So that happens. And I think that Clara kind of recalled that when she went through her stuff with Griffin, because at first she would not tell her sister.
Yeah. You also think, too, since Wilson was abusing Emily, that was another reason why Emily killed Griffin, you know, because of the abuse that she received.
Right, and she didn't want that for Clara.
For her sister. So you're thinking, okay, I can see this.
Right.
That's fine.
And almost in your mind, you're like, good.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm glad he got killed.
Got whacked.
Yeah. Still glad he did, but yeah.
Right.
For different reasons.
But then, did you find yourself a little bit kind of almost feeling, I don't want to say bad for Griffin, but like feeling like maybe he wouldn't have been as big of a monster had she not gotten involved?
No.
You didn't?
I didn't. See, he raped her.
No, and for sure, like that, you know, that's its thing. But I felt like,
I think he would have continued with Clara And he might not have killed Clara, but I think as he grew up, I think there was a good chance he would have continued raping women, and I think possibly killed women later on.
I guess and I don't know if I'm maybe confusing the part or whatnot, but there was the part where they found the phones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was texting Clara off a burner phone,
mm-hmm.
and the sister was egging him on, saying, yeah, you should threaten to kill her and all this stuff. And so part of me is like, would he have been as aggressive after the rape
towards
Clara
mm-hmm.
had Emily not been a little fly in his ear?
Yeah, I can see that.
Not that changes, the rape or anything.
So if you just caught that little thing that we said there, Emily is a fucking psycho. So
basically you learn in the book that, okay, Wilson did not abuse her.
Mm-mm.
She abused Wilson. And
mm-hmm.
there was parts when that stuff started coming out that you're like, no fucking way.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think is not a talked about subject is men
getting raped. And not just in prison, but
on the outside, yeah. And I was really glad after the fact that she incorporated that too.
Yeah.
But basically Emily like sodomized Wilson.
With a bottle.
Like beer bottles
mm-hmm.
and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you find that out later on. And like I said, when I first heard that, I'm like, no.
How could she do that?
But then you get further into it and you're like, oh shit, like she really fucking did.
Mm-hmm.
And then
another thing too that I like the way that Deanna Cameron did that was, okay, men get raped, boys and men get raped. A lot of times when you think of that, you think of it by, an uncle or a close relative or something.
Or like another male, probably.
Exactly. You don't think it as a female.
Right.
And it doesn't happen, I'm sure, a lot. Or if it does, it's not reported. So maybe it does happen a lot. I don't know. But the fact that she included that in, I thought that was great.
Yeah, and not only did she include that in, she played Wilson's character so well to the fact that he did not want to report it because I think he was a dropout.
And a druggie.
And a kind of a marijuana type druggie.
The police did not approve of him.
Yeah.
He had run-ins with the law.
Yeah, so, I mean, he even said, like, who's going to believe me? Mm-hmm. You're this pretty blonde cheerleader. But what was funny is she even thought, like, who's going to believe me?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think this is a subject, if it's a heavy subject to read,
mm-hmm.
but I think teenagers need to know about this.
Yes.
It's
more prevalent.
Yeah.
Now.
With social media and with phones and stuff like that, this might be an easy thing. Just give them the book if you don't want to talk to them about it right away.
Right.
Read the book together. You can discuss it, and then you can discuss other things.
But and that's the other thing that I think not a lot of parents discuss this stuff.
Mm-mm.
Because I don't recall ever being talked to about it.
No.
It seemed even with Clara, like she wasn't sure that she was even raped at first.
She, just bad sex because for the, first time.
Yeah, like she knew she didn't really want it this way or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And even like when she finally did she was telling Emily bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was Emily. She was like, well, that's just kinky or, this
mm-hmm.
and that. Granted, you find out Emily is a fucking psycho.
And was messing with her sister's mind.
Through Griffin.
Mm-hmm. And herself, face to face.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
Yeah, she wasn't even sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this considered rape?
Yeah. And it is. It is, and it was, and it, yeah. And I guess in a way, too, since social media is a thing, it is easier to find information about this,
mm-hmm.
if you do want to look into it more. So that's kind of nice for parents, but at the same time, it should not replace a parent's responsibility.
Right.
And what I was thinking, which is kind of funny, is my dad and stepmom were foster parents. And the kids who went through the house, many of them were sexually abused. My parents never taught those, none of my parents, my two sets of parents,
right.
They never talked to me about this kind of stuff. And you would think parents who work with children daily with this would be like, hey, Kim, let's have a little chat about this just to make sure it doesn't happen to you. And I learned about it through these children, which that's not the best way to learn about these things.
So did these kids just tell you?
Yeah, they would tell me their stories and stuff like that. And they were horrific. Some of them, all of them were horrific. Some were stay with you probably much longer than other ones. No, they all stayed with me. I shouldn't say that. But yeah, just, ugh. But yeah, so it's kind of like, parents, talk to your children. Just do it.
Yeah, like, I kind of unrelated, but sort of related. I was watching, I think it might have been Joe Rogan, one of his episodes of his podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't remember who he had on, but I think it was a guy from like Sweden or some European country. I'll find it and you can link it below. But one thing Joe Rogan had asked this guy is, hey, I have a question for you. He's like, I had a friend in college who was from the same country as you. And he would always talk about talking to his mom while she was taking a bath.
Okay.
And he was like, is that true? or was that just him? Because we were all, like, all of the guys that he was friends with was like, it's fucking weird. And this guy's like, yeah, we do. And he's like, so you saw your mom naked? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, that's because we don't over-sexualize, the human body and stuff. And to me, I thought about that, and I'm like, I kind of like that. Like, to make people aware of things instead of just being like, oh, let's not talk about it, or
those are your sex bits. So.
Right. Like, you censor all these things. It doesn't protect anybody.
No, it
doesn't. It just leaves mystery, and it leaves
confusion.
For stuff like this to happen. It's like, this doesn't need to be happening. Like, yes, there are people out there, and it's always going to happen. But to have those of us who do not think like a predator be able to analyze situations or make more responsible decisions. I mean, she ended up getting raped. She liked this guy. They went to a party, and then he brought her upstairs, and I don't think she was totally sure because she is very naive. And to me, that's frustrating to me, because it's like, who knows if you could prevent it or not, but why wouldn't you try?
Exactly. I think the key words that you said there was analyze, and I don't remember the other thing you said. Our society in America, we don't do that. When you send children to school, you just memorize everything. And you just regurgitate the stuff back.
Right.
You aren't taught to think for yourself.
No.
And this is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah. But that's what this book really makes you do. It makes you think. And, like sex ed and,
Our sex ed was a joke.
I had a pretty good sex ed. I don't know if they're allowed to do it anymore the way they did. Just the whole mentality of like, you're not going to have sex. Don't drink alcohol. Don't smoke pot. Like just stigmatizing and making everything
more mysterious, and more kid wants to do with it.
Right. Or just like the human body. Like, and this could also just be me, but it's so irritating when you watch like a movie and like the women's like tits and everything. None of that's covered up, like if it's an R movie, but a guy's like schlong and whatever is all like, it's just like, what is that saying? Or on MTV, as long as I have like my nipples covered, then we're good. I'm like, what about the nipples makes it?
And babies need to drink from nipples, so leave those alone. But the thing that was making me laugh was when you're talking about covering penises is, like, part of me is like, yeah, cover that, because a penis is not attractive, so I'm fine with that.
But it's just like, it seems so unbalanced in some of the movies, like,
of our society. Women are sex objects and men are not. And
and
that's a whole nother talk.
Yeah. And I don't know. It just, we brought up several times, like, Kim does not have children. Her and her husband don't have children. I have a stepdaughter, but my husband and I are on the fence, leaning more towards no for having our own children.
And that's a whole nother topic, women who don't have children.
Yeah. But people always say to me, it's like, oh, you'll change your mind, or you're so young. And it's like, I'm 27 right now, I'll be 28 this month. And the thing that I look at it is I'm a very analytical person. So I'm like, okay, it's not just, well, I love them. It's, can I protect them in situations like this? And
I support them monetarily?
Right. It's the big picture. And people are like, well, this is like this is not,
It's
and
common.
it's like, it is very common. Like, who are you kidding?
Exactly.
Like, what world are you living in? These are things you have to consider because
it's only getting worse.
Right. And it's like, I always tell Josh that I would be afraid of a situation like this. I would be, because I would literally kill somebody. And Josh would visit me in prison.
I would visit you too.
And
commissary.
It would be like that. That's fine. But like the other thing I told Josh is like, what happens if your kid is that predator?
Exactly.
And people are like, oh, it's the parenting. It's the parenting.
No.
It can be.
It can be.
But
it's not just all.
No, not everybody that's psychotic has psycho parents. What do you do?
And like even in this book, they don't talk about Griffin's parents that much, but they didn't seem like psychos to me.
No, and they didn't seem like psychos. They seemed like very loving parents, but they also seemed very naive to who Griffin was.
But everyone was.
To a sense, but I was very irritated because I tried to put myself in Griffin's mother's shoes when Griffin's mother found out that Clara had said that Griffin had raped me. And she was just like, how could you say that? Like, he's dead and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that doesn't change what happened when he was living. And I would like to think that if this girl could tell you in detail what happened and show you scars, that you would think about it for a minute, like with your head instead of your emotions.
I don't know. And the other thing with that too is she was also thinking that the lawyer was doing this as a defense,
right?
So I mean, I don't know how I would react. I would hope I would be. No, I'm emotional. I would not be. I would just be like, "Shut up, you little bitch! Don't lie about my son that way." But I would hope after I calm down that I would be able to look at it.
And I think the other thing is around the time that Clara had ended up saying something to Griffin's mother, the other stuff was coming out too. Yeah. So that's kind of where I feel like, okay, you need to separate this because she's not trying to defend her sister.
She wants to throw her sister more under the bus.
Yeah, she wants to say like, no, what Emily did was wrong and she deserves whatever she's got coming.
Plus, yeah.
And she constantly said, I don't think Griffin deserved to die, and she felt terrible that he died.
And the thing is too, besides the fact feeling terrible that he died, she never really gets closure. He never gets punished. He's dead. And everyone is still thinking that he's this great guy. Right. And even the people who do believe that he raped her, maybe in the back of their head, they're always, kind of questioning a little bit because Griffin can't defend himself,
Oh. The one other tidbit with the whole rape thing is Clara changed how she dressed completely.
Yes.
To dressing like a normal teenage girl to no makeup, baggy clothes, hiding everything. And once this all came out, everything came out, and she felt like a weight was lifted, she went back to her normal clothes.
And then
when she went to school, she had some makeup on or whatever, and it didn't sound like anything slutty, but it sounded like...
Even if it was slutty, who cares?
Right. It sounded like just
she can dress however she wants.
Whatever. One of Griffin's friends, I believe, because at that point the rumor had got, or not rumor, but, had gone around the school that she was claiming she was raped, said something along the lines like...
You dress like that, you deserve it.
Yeah, or you were asking for it. And I'm like, can we just...
But people still think that way.
Like, to me, that's just asinine. That's just asinine and stupid. Like, it makes me so
angry.
Yes, because how, like,
no, I don't care. No, yeah. I don't care if you're naked. You are not asking for it.
Right.
If you say no, it's no.
Right. It's very simple.
It is.
It's like, okay, if you're in a lot, like, I guess I look at it from like, okay, if you're a guy, guys are very touchy, non-gay guys are very touchy about quit looking at my dick or, whatever. So if you're in a locker room and you're exposed because you're changing and someone just takes that opportunity and grabs you because you were naked, you were asking for it, is that acceptable then? Like,
yeah, it should be then. Yeah.
It infuriates me. Like, how do you even come up with that stupid fucking concept. Like, you were asking for it. Okay. All right.
And the whole other thing, too, is even if you say yes to sex and you change your mind and say stop, if they don't stop, that's rape.
Right.
You know, at any time. And I don't understand how people, I can understand how people can justify it, but it's angry. It makes me angry.
Right.
And
Yeah, it's just very, and I wish something was done a little bit more in the book with that kid that made that fucking comment.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Colby was trying.
Thank you. I'm staring at my notes. Colby. Yeah, he, like, stood up for her, and then she, like, hits him in the head to, you know, make him stop, and then they end up getting yelled at in detention. Was that a thing, too, I think?
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's, oh, God.
Yeah, that part just, like, really made me just very angry, because I'm just, like, how?
And that's another reason why people don't report it, you know, because so
like
many times
I was at a party, or, you know.
They'll, like, take a look at what you were wearing, you know, and the lawyers will be like, well, she had a short skirt on and a halter top, so she was, and hooker heels, so she was asking for it, you know. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. That, the thought process behind that is just completely baffling to me. But overall, I mean, it was a very good book. It was very well written, very layered, and I felt like she did a really good job of incorporating, like, the whole picture. Yes, like, it wasn't just like Clara got raped, end of story.
That's what I was afraid it was gonna be like, and I'm just like, but no.
Yeah,
it was so good.
No, and like I was said earlier, it just seems like young adult books.
Some of them
are intense.
Not worse, but yeah, more intense than adult books.
It has kind of reminded me of the book that we read for one of the book clubs, the Isla Bic book, a little bit.
Oh.
I think this one was better.
It's not ringing a bell.
I'll have to look up the title, but it was, the whole concept of the book was about, like, this high schooler being gay in a small town.
Yes.
Yes. So it was that was intense too. This is definitely more intense, but this is kind of what it reminded me of. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, holy crap, man. Like,
and that's the thing, like, I've mentioned this before, and I will continue to mention it until I die. When people comment about what you read, tell them to fuck off. Because YA fiction, it's good stuff, you know? And if you want to read Christian fiction, science fiction, whatever, you read what you like.
And for people to think, like, oh, because that was the other thing, like, my husband was asking me, because I was telling him about this a little bit last night when we were laying in bed, and he was like, what is the age range that they recommend young adult for? And I'm like, I don't
I think
really
it's, like,
know.
13.
Because, like, my cousin, for example, she's an avid reader. She loves young adult fantasy, and she likes the young adult fantasy, especially if there's, like, romance and whatever. She loves that. She reads mainly young adults stuff. And almost all the young adult stuff I've read, it's either been, like, very young adult geared, or it's been very intense. And I'm like, ooh, like, would I give this to, like, a 12-year-old?
Yeah, I would, but I would also read it along with them.
And make sure that they were mature enough to...
Exactly. I mean, there are some 12-year-olds who are mature enough, and there's some 17-year-olds who are not mature enough. So, you know, just gotta keep that in mind when you...
And be open to having the discussion about it.
Exactly.
You know, if you're...
And if you can't, if you just cannot, find a friend who can. Find an aunt. You know, someone who can, you know.
Right, someone who can talk about it. Instead of just the mentality of, like, oh, there's diseases and this and that. It's like, yeah, there are.
And instead of just telling them that there's diseases and trying to scare them that way, talk about the diseases. You know, don't just be like, you're going to get AIDS and die. You need to discuss every aspect of it, you know? And don't try to scare your children. It's going to backfire.
Yeah, it definitely will. And it also definitely makes it challenging that if something happens, do you have the relationship that they would tell you about it? Because odds are they're not going to go to law enforcement on their own as opposed to a parent. And so if they're not even going to go to a parent, they're probably not going to go to law enforcement, and it could keep happening. So I have noticed that the Wattpad books is the publisher. I've seen a lot, like, at Walmart, Natasha Preston, I think a lot of her YA books are also kind of, like, effed up a little bit, and they're also by Wattpad, so they seem to be...
I think it's a good group of authors and readers and stuff. I think they're very supportive of each other, which is wonderful.
So, yeah, definitely grab a copy. Let us know what you think. Comment down below. I have been trying to respond to all the comments.
Yeah, I'm glad you have been.
Yeah.
I have not. I should someday. I will.
Yeah, we love being able to have a conversation with people about it and other people's thoughts and whatnot.
And then Jess, like, if there's things, she'll be like, Kim, did you see this? And I'll be like, I didn't, but I'll go look.
Right. So, yeah. So other than that.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, tell your friends.